Last week I talked about the opening sections of this book that was given to me with each and every breath, a guide to meditation, from the Thai forest tradition, in other words, the Theravada tradition, Thanissaro Bhikkhu, Jeffrey de Graaf. And it is a very practical, insightful, detailed guide to meditation. And as I said last week, I was amazed at how he brought together so many different traditions. The yogic, it seemed to me, the yogic tradition, the Theravada tradition, Kundalini tradition, and the breath tradition in general, as in Zen, and indicated a few of the ways that evolved, especially the balance of outer breath and then coming into the inner breath and circulation of energy and then the spread of energy throughout the body from various points, etc., which is connected to the Vipassana. So that's what I talked about last week. I'd like to spend a little time on the last section of the book today, which is advanced practice. All right, that sounds a little too daunting, right? It provides a map, and he has several pages on what a map is good for and what a map is not good for. I remember when I started out in the spiritual life as a young Jesuit, I was fascinated by all these books about, this is the way the spiritual life evolves and the different states of prayer and, becoming a mystic and all this. And so, okay, how can I speed this process up, it can get, really silly. So he compares it to, you can eat a mango when it's ripe, but if you start reading a book and seeing what mangoes are made out of, and you just try and assemble all the chemicals, you're not going to get a mango. It has to evolve, literally organically within. But it is interesting to know the general evolution, the general way things do evolve, so that you can, when you get there, you can recognize, that landmark. I remember reading about that, and so expectations can be dangerous, but they can also be, helpful to a certain extent. So anyway, they speak about the jhanas, Jhana. It's the Pali word for dhyana. Dhyana meaning meditation or concentration in Sanskrit. And so this is one of the points of the Eightfold Path, right concentration. So talking about how to be concentrated, how to focus, how to become unify yourself, be unified in meditation. And he has an interesting phrase. He says these are when you get beyond the sense of the body's form. Now you certainly don't lose sense of your body in meditation. We integrate it, but the hard edges. You're going in more interior, so that they do tend to vanish. Become less prominent, certainly. And according to the meditation books, that I have read elsewhere too, he points out that there are 4 jhanas, followed by 5 formless states. Now this rejoins fundamental Buddhist lore or cosmology. You find in the Zen literature as well, there's the realm of desire, then there's the realm of form, and the realm of formlessness. So Kamaloka is the word for the realm of desire, then Rupaloka, and then Aryupaloka, formless. And again here, it's not talking so much about geographical levels, as we're talking about states of consciousness. And that's important to realize, because I looked back at the Shurangama Sutra that I commented on some time ago, and remember it has all sorts of diagrams and levels, and there are 28 levels of this and 63 levels of this and 50 levels of that, and it can get quite overwhelming. But here I went and I discovered they had the same 4 jhanas and the same in the level of form beyond desire. So here we're talking advanced practice when you've been able to overcome some of the the desires, the bodily and emotional stuff, the conflicts and all that has been resolved, so you're able to get a certain peace, concentration, still in the realm of form, the jhanas, but beyond the realm of desire. So the Shurangama Sutra speaks about six levels of desire, and 18 levels of form and 4 levels of formlessness, and then the 28 heavens. 28 heavens of the cosmology. It comes from Sanskrit, but then also into the Buddhist level. And there are descriptions in this Shurangama Sutra of deities, levels of being, levels of the heavens. Which is useful to realize, from what I just said, these are not geographic. They're internal. Just like heaven and hell are not geographic in the Christian realm, it's interstates. Right? So and we become the bodhisattvas, we come into the level of the angels and the devas, etc., the realm of the gods, as it said here. It's just different, higher levels, richer, deeper levels of consciousness, more integrated, simple levels of consciousness. So it's interesting to compare inner, outer, symbolism, etc. But it's, in all these cases, even the bodhisattvas themselves, it's about an inner state, more than a place. But it is fascinating to compare those two. So we get out of the realm of desire here into the jhanas, and each is divided into 3 or 4, and that's where you get 18 out of the 4 if you read the sutra. Now, what we're talking about in the first jhana is that you're getting focus and a certain evaluation, a certain concentration. That's becoming simpler and more pointed. And he spends 3 or 4 pages on this particular first jhana: singleness of preoccupation, evaluation, directed thought, and the other 2 factors which arise here: rapture and pleasure. That's an important thing to realize. As you grow in your sitting and in your life, if you're not meeting more and more rapture and pleasure, if you don't realize and experience that these are wonderful, well, then you're not on the right track. So we're getting beyond the conflicted emotions and getting into the fundamental reality of reality, which is joy, and passion, and peace, and love, and all the things we call it. So that's an important way to realize where you are, and you're allowing, because it's a gift. You use the word allow a lot. It's a gift. It's not something you're achieving yourself, as he says numerous times. You can't construct this. You can't control it. You can't direct it. And if you do, then you lose it. But you can be present in these various ways. He says that there's a focused awareness, but then there's also the background awareness of that energy that we talked about last time. You should begin to experience it like a background, not just background awareness, but background energy. And these then begin to merge, your awareness and your energy in this deep, subtle level. In the second jhana, awareness becomes one, the breath becomes one, and both become one with each other. Interestingly, he compares it. Think of the mind as the lens of a camera. At first, the focal point is located in front of the lens. You're observing. But here, the lens and the camera, in the second instance, into the lens itself. So it's just awareness. It's not awareness of. It's just the awareness becomes simpler and richer and deeper. But the pleasure is very much still there. And the movement, he says, the energy is moving. I think you discover that as you continue in your practice. You sense there's a movement of energy sometimes. And that's still very much characteristic of, it can even be like a Kundalini kind of movement. Now, in the Shurangama Sutra, that first jhana is compared to being a member of Brahma's retinue, heaven of Brahma's ministers, etc. So it's very much on the level of, ultimate reality, but you're kind of being there as assistants or servants, and you're not fully initiated. It's an interesting way of looking at it. In the second, where you have this movement and this more stable presence, speaking about the realm of light. So there's deep tranquility that's lucid and still, but gods, or we, who emit light, they shine with inexhaustible brilliance and illumine the realms in the 10 directions, permeating light. So that's almost what the movement of the energy is. It's light branching outward, penetrating through all in a tranquil way. This is the genius and the insight and the reason for the monastic life in all the traditions, is that even though you're not out in the world, just by being at this level of conscious awareness and transformation, you're emitting light in 10 directions. You're sending light out. We call it the mystical body. The monk is there sending out, waves of grace in the mystical body. It's the same kind of idea. And in fact, on one of the levels, they speak about the heaven of speech by means of light. Thomas Aquinas and other theologians speak about the angels communicating just by means of light energy passing between them. So you can communicate by this level of light too out there. Fascinating idea. But see, there's movement and there's tranquil brightness. The commentary by in the Shurangama Sutra by this Chinese master, modern Chinese master, says that this is in this realm, the physical breath can stop. So, just this light awareness, at least momentarily, at least for a while. Now, what happens in the third jhana is that the movement stops and it's just pure tranquility and solidity. How does he describe it here? You're allowing the body to be filled with a solid, still energy. Solid, still energy. Very still. And so the movement stops. And this is also where, the commentary points out, this is where your thoughts finally stop. Now, if that's not motivation enough, your thoughts finally stop. It is attainment. So it's this still solid energy. And it's compared to purity and tranquility, in the sutra. The third and the fourth, the third level especially. The heaven, all permeating purity, universal purity, tranquility, boundless bliss, etc. And you can see why. I mean, if your thoughts are finally shut up, then of course it's boundless tranquility. And then the fourth one is just even more along those lines, where there is, even a greater solidity, and mindfulness becomes pure. Because both the mind and the breath are still, equanimity becomes pure as well. The mind is at total equilibrium. One of the ways that that's manifest in the sutra is that you're getting beyond even notions of suffering or bliss. Whatever happens, you're in that state. Whatever happens externally, beyond calling it bliss or suffering, whatever you're going through. That's it's all integrated into that, and going beyond that, beyond beyond the struggle, suffering, and bliss. So, heaven beyond affliction, it's called. Now, the realm of formlessness is really interesting. As you go even further, and here's where we can talk more at length. From this realm of perfect equanimity and tranquility and stability, and just like we had before with the light, it just branches out further and further, because your own limited consciousness and all that movement and stuff is transcendent. And you can really let go. You can really let go more into this and just let it be what it's going to be. And that's what's called the dimension of the infinitude of space. So it really is boundless, literally, almost on the physical level, boundless space. Some of the yogic masters speak about the chakras expanding, infinitely beyond as they grow, beyond. So the boundlessness of space, plane of boundless space. And then there's the plane of boundless consciousness. So it's not just space, finally, which you're aware of, but consciousness itself, quotes your consciousness, the consciousness becomes boundless. So what could be more than that? Well, this is where we get to some practical advice too, which the notion of emptiness. The third one is the dimension of nothingness. So the way he explains it is, you're kind of infinite consciousness. You're kind of aware of knowing. You're kind of aware, being aware of aware. Aware is aware, and knowing is knowing. But suddenly there's not that either. It's just nothing. It's a label, that knowing. He says it's awareness, but you're not labeling it as that. It's a sense of lightness. That's one way he describes it. Interestingly enough, in the sutra, it's called the plane in which one has nothing. So a dimension of nothingness and a dimension of having nothing. And here's where we join some of the Western masters too. We talk about emptiness and nothingness. You have nothing, and you are nothing, and know nothing. St. John of the Cross, the ascent of Mount Carmel. To come to the pleasure you have not, you must go by a way in which you enjoy not. So beyond desire and all that stuff. To come to the knowledge you have not, you must go by a way in which you know not. You don't know anything anymore. No thing. You don't know anything. You come to the possession you have not, you must go by a way in which you possess not. You have nothing. That's what it's called here. To come to be what you are not, you must go by a way in which you are not. So it's empty, nothing. You are no thing. God is no thing. Well, it is no thing, but it's nothing. But it's everything, right? Well, let's look at what St. Thomas, maybe it's St. Thomas Keating, who recently died. One of the talk that I was privileged to hear a few years ago at Snow Mass in our interfaith gathering, he was radiating this kind of simplicity and light that we were talking about just a minute ago, and he was saying that we have to know nothing, possess nothing, and be nothing, because that's what God is. God knows nothing, possesses nothing, and is nothing. Pure emptiness, pure nothingness. God. That's God's humility. God shares that. And in the end, since we're that too, in the end he says, hold on to your hats, he said. There's only God. All is God. There's only God. Everything else is God. There's no separation anymore. This is not pantheism. These are the words don't fit anymore. It's just that there's no separation. Even some of the Jewish and Muslim mystics, where the Muslims say there's no God but God. Some mystics have said there's nothing but God. Or when the Jews say, the Lord our God is one, they mean there's only the one. So all mystics, even from the most strictly monotheistic traditions, seem to get to this point where it's all and nothing. Everything and nothing. It's just I'm just telling you. I'm not trying to. So and then ultimately, you move beyond even the distinctions. If everything is, even the suffering and the bliss, because the fourth, that's not the end. The fourth is the plane on which cognition or perception is absent yet not absent. So what does that mean? Well, it means you're beyond all the distinctions. Everything, nothing, light, dark, be, not be. All of those distinctions. You're still. How does he put it? You're. It's better expressed here. The individual consciousness, according to the sutra, the individual consciousness has vanished by now, as you could well imagine. But the nature that lies at its ending of the endless consciousness is known to them. So the consciousness that now seems to exist and yet not to exist, it seems to have disappeared and yet is not, because we're still kind of aware of it as emptiness is form, and form is emptiness, and it's, you're aware of the distinction, but not the separation. So that's why it's still the realm of formlessness, and it's not yet nirvana. But it's the highest level we can get to. It's kind of what in the West we call the coincidentia oppositorum, the coincidence of opposites, where all the different opposites seem to come together. It's not this and not that, but it's all at once. Mysterium conjunctionis in Jung as well, the conjoining of all the seeming opposites, which you're still vaguely aware of, but they blend all together. And then, beyond that, the sutra says, of course, none of these people are enlightened yet. You vanish into nirvana when that happens. But you're well on your way. So there's the map, and you can look at it from various books. What it seems to be doing is presenting things that are ever simpler, ever more stable, ever more all-inclusive, ever more wondrous and joyful, and that show you who you really are, and show the connectedness of everything. So, when I gave this talk this past week up in White Plains, Russ, who's the Dharma holder there, said, "Wow, or you can just sit and be present." So that's what you should do. And your reality will take it from there. Any urgent questions?
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes.
It seems like a very long journey that you're describing.
Yes.
And whenever I read about many of the people who attain those states, some of them say they've spent 40 years meditating, sometimes 17 hours a day.
Well, 17 hours a day is probably not necessary, but if it takes 40 years, you better get started.
Well, that's what I'm thinking of. I don't know how much time.
It is like everything. It's like everything that's worthwhile. It tends to be a long journey. A lot of it depends on where you're starting from, how much mishigas you've got, in your heart and soul and mind, to start with. Most of us have a lot, and how faithful you are to your practice. What happens in your life that you can integrate, that can help you along your way. How much guidance you have from others. What practices and traditions come your way that you explore. So it's important to be open, and to follow your inner guidance and respond to the events and the people and the books and the opportunities that come your way. That's the way God, the universe, speaks to you. But it's worth the journey. You know, I've been on it for 50 years consciously now, and it's you know, I don't know if I've gotten much beyond the first plateau, but it's certainly worth it. You know, I wouldn't want to have lived any other way. To make it the primary focus of our life, and the primary goal of our life. But that's already a calling. Each one has her own calling, you know, to respond to. Sure.
When you read a book like that, the impression I get is the words totally fail
Yes.
to express the experience.
Right.
And so he and many, many other authors are doing their best, but it's basically, it can't be done.
Well, it can't be done in the sense of expressing it. That's why John McCross, for example, uses poetry. Many mystics use poetry to express it. But one thing that he says, when you get to a level like this, he says, some of the lessons learned from this taste of release, which comes, you know, when you come to these experiences, he says, one is that the Buddha was right. There really is a deathless dimension outside of space and time.
In what dimension?
Deathless.
Deathless.
There really is a deathless dimension outside of space and time, and it really is free of suffering and stress. Wow. I mean, that's just two short sentences. You know, one short sentence. There really is a deathless dimension outside of space and time. And it really is free of suffering and stress. You know, that's the heaven that all the traditions are looking for. What do you want to call it? Nirvana, you know, heaven. And as you see, it's a state of mind, you know, primarily. It branches out and radiates through whatever space and time are left. But all that's it's beyond. It's beyond, outside of space and time. So that's the final reality. So that's encouraging. You know? Sometimes people think, oh, there's just nothingness. You know, the Buddhists think there's just nothingness. You know? Well, no. No Buddhist thinks there's just nothingness, unless they mean nothingness like in the third formless state, which is indescribable everythingness. And it really is free of suffering and stress. Wow. You know, which means you can probably be suffering in your body, but you know, have pain in your body while you're still on this side of the veil. But there's also interior bliss. You're not. You know, as Eckhart Tolle says, you know, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, because it's your mental response to the pain. And at this point, you know, you get beyond that. Because you realize that the deathless dimension was always available, but that you missed it because of your own stupidity. The first taste of release is humbling. So, and if it doesn't make you humble, then it's not the real thing either. He says interestingly about the God language, and he says, talking about, well, I'm experiencing the ground of being, or God, or whatever. That's putting words on it again. I mean, it's not false, but you're way, way beyond any kind of words here. And the other danger of it is saying, wow, I'm in contact with the ground of being. And as soon as you say that, well, of course, I'm in contact. You're way back in the ego again. Again, it's humbling. The real experience is humbling for the ego, which is why it's called The Dark Night by John McCross, and all the purifications you go through in the various realms. All right, let's do the vows.